Hi, I'm Rajiv, and today I'm going to share with you my fundamental art supplies here at the art store. I don't need to be in a fancy department store to be completely amused. My idea of a good time where I could just look at everything for hours is when I'm in a hardware store, when I'm in a grocery store, and when I'm in an art supply store. I love looking at paintbrushes and pencils and sketchbooks. I'm going to take you inside my favorite art store here in New York City, Blick, in Soho, on Broadway, and I'm going to show you the things that I am typically buying on a regular basis for my arsenal of art supplies. This right here is the section of pre-cut mats, and this is fantastic because having a piece of artwork matted can be really expensive if it's done as like a custom mat that's cut out of framers. But what a lot of people are unaware of is that art stores generally have a section of pre-cut mats. What I do when I paint watercolor studies and offer them for sale is I bring the watercolors here, and then I pull out the piece of artwork. Here's a watercolor I did recently, and I pick the mat that's the most appropriate for the piece, both in size and color. Sometimes my studies aren't a generic size, so I find the mat that's the closest, and it does the job. These mats might not necessarily be what the customer who's purchasing this is going to keep with the painting, but to send it out, I find that this presentation is it's a nice way to receive something that you've paid a bit of money for. Ooh, there's blue. Oh, the blue looks good too. Go to the thrift store, find a frame, do it yourself. The matte section, this is a hidden gem. Watercolor. The watercolor section of an art store, wherever I am in the world, I always go to the watercolor section and look. Watercolors generally come in two formats. They come in liquid tube colors, but they also come in what are called pans. And the pans, these are all packaged so you can't really see them, but it's a little cake of dried color that you actually wet, and you use it by putting the wet brush onto the cake of watercolor. My teacher, when I was first learning watercolor, he recommended buying an empty palette and actually using a liquid color because it's a lot quicker to access the color when it's already wet. So we squeeze this into the palette and use it this way. Either works. I love two brands of watercolor. Winsor & Newton goes way back. It's an English company. John Taylor Sargent used Winsor & Newton watercolor. But I also love a German brand because I used to live in Munich, and it's over here. And it's behind lock and key. This is Schminke. And Schminke, it was a word used for makeup. Schminke, color, pigment. And there's a German saying, "Wir sind zu arme, billig zu kaufen." We're too poor to buy cheap things. If you're going to buy stuff, invest in buying good quality stuff, especially if you're undertaking an artistic practice and you're committing the time, the energy, and the effort to learn. If you invest in good quality materials, you will be inspired and it will fuel your practice. That's what I do with myself. I don't skimp. I don't skimp on art materials. I buy the best quality that's available, and then I work really hard to warrant those purchases. The Schminke is a part of that. I was told that when you're painting watercolor, you have to use 100% cotton fibered paper. And if you don't, if it says cotton paper, that doesn't mean that it's 100% cotton paper, and that's really important. A lot of these pads that are cheap, they're misleading because the cover will say cotton paper, but it maybe has 10% cotton fiber in it, and that allows them to put cotton paper on the cover. In order for it to be 100% pure cotton, it has to actually say 100% pure cotton. Don't buy anything else because you're being tricked. The best brushes for watercolor painting are pure squirrel hair bristles, and my favorite brand of brush, like I go gaga over these brushes, are Isabey. Isabey is a brand that's not easy to find. It's a French company. Most of the brushes are made in Mauritius, but they're such high quality. They hold so much water, and not only do they work so well, but these brushes are just so beautiful to look at. Like when I set up for watercolor, everything laid out on the table, the palette, the paint, and the brushes are beautiful. Like the setup itself is a work of art. Look at how these look, just laid down. Look at even the logo. Like even the fonts that have been chosen for the numbers, the Isabey logo, and then Petit Gris, which is the type of hair. Even that, isn't that just a beautiful thing? So I use two types of brushes for oil painting. I use a soft brush that's like a synthetic or a squirrel-haired brush, and then I also use a thick bristled hog hair brush. One of Sargent's pupils wrote down that Sargent told them to always use a brush that would really pick up paint, so the brushes needed to be thick and strong and sturdy. When I'm looking at a brush, I actually, like a hog hair brush, I pick it up and I go like this to the bristles, and I feel like, does it feel springy? Is there resistance to it? And that to me is really important, because when I'm pressing on the canvas, I want to know that this brush is going to be able to pick up the paint and actually put it on the canvas where I'm applying it. And this springiness, if it's springy like this, it means it's going to be effective. So this is one of my favorite brands of hog-haired bristle brush, Escoda. Since 1933, they're made in Spain. They're made in Barcelona. I love, love, love these bristle brushes. This is where there's all the stuff for repairing things that have gilding on them. Like I buy these gilded picture frames that are often in really bad condition, and when I'm fixing them up, I come here because if I need to touch up areas with a little bit of paint, then I use these paste paints, and they come in all different shades of gold. But if you've never done gilding before, this is a low investment version of real gold leaf that produces an effect that's not the same, but it's affordable. All this faux gold leaf. I used to do this as a teenager. Get these little kits and then gild things. Like I would make like treasure boxes with pasta stuck on them, and then I would gild them. It's a fun thing to do if you have kids. I love the selection of different colors of masking tape or artist's tape that they have here, but specifically from this section, they have pH neutral tape. And I use this tape when I'm taping down watercolor paper to a board. This is really, really important. My watercolor teacher told me that if you use normal masking tape, years later, the taped area will yellow to a very unpleasant yellow color, because it's not pH neutral. So pH neutral tape. The other thing that I'm always getting is double-sided tape. This is kind of like something that not a lot of people use and have, but double-sided tape is so handy for so many things. And I won't go into all the uses that I have for this, but I will say that when you have this, you find uses for it and you're like, oh, I'm so glad I have that. The double-sided stuff, I would say, is a must for everyone. whenever I see one of these papers that I don't have, I usually get it and I take it home and I add it to a little roll of the other papers. And then when I'm wrapping a really significant or important gift, I deviate from my brown paper standard and I go over and get one of these papers and make it extra special. Sometimes in my calligraphy work, I get a commission to design a logo, and that final rendering of the logo that's in pen and ink, when I'm delivering that to the client, I always deliver it in one of these boxes lined with acid-free tissue paper, because usually it's the sort of thing that the client is going to keep for many, many years, their original hand-drawn logo. So I always want to present it to them in an archival way that it's going to keep it safe, but that's also very beautiful. And I think these boxes are simple, classic, beautiful. You might not be familiar with what all these letters and numbers mean. They're the hardness or the softness of the pencil. So in the very middle, the HB is the middle in terms of hardness, and then as we go to H and 2H, 3H, so the actual graphite gets harder and harder, it will also make a lighter line. As we move to B, so HB to B, it's getting softer, 2B is softer, 3B, 4B, 5B, 6B. 8B is a very soft, almost waxy feel to the pencil, and it's much darker. When you're putting down rough lines for a drawing, you use a hard pencil, and when you want to put in more final lines, you might use something softer because it's darker and it will show up, especially when you're doing watercolors. When you're doing watercolors, the lines you want to actually keep so that you can see them while you're painting need to be a softer, darker pencil than something really hard. But for your initial sketching, you use something harder. Pencil nerd. In art school, in all my art classes, I always have one of these kneaded erasers. This is surprisingly hard to find in Germany. When I lived over there, I had to really look for these. So if you're coming over from Europe, buy a kneaded eraser. Whether you're an artist or a hobbyist or neither, coming to an art store and just looking is a wonderful way of inspiring yourself to be more creative. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.